Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2022-23 season. My name is Dan, and a couple of weeks ago, one of the first pre-season videos I made this year was a video all about hidden gems, all about those differentials that I thought could be really good coming into the new season. And in that video, I promised that I would revisit it in a couple of weeks and try and find some more hidden gems. And my word, I have found a few more really nice players. This time I focused specifically on super low ownership players with that hardly any people are really talking about or having in their FPL team. Believe me guys, these players could go off. These players could go nuclear. These guys could be the real difference in your FPL team. But please don't expect these players to be perfect and, you know, completely infallible. There is going to be some stinkers in here. These are really risky players that not a lot of people are going for, and for many of them for good reason. So if you're happy to take a risk and you want to spice up your team with one or two differentials, hopefully one of the players in this video will be the one for you. If you do enjoy this video, if you do enjoy these picks, please do like the video. It helps out the channel so much. Please do subscribe as well. And if you really like this video, maybe I will do one more before game week 1 begins. But without further ado, guys, we've got 8 players going from the most owned to the least owned player. Let's get into it. Okay, the first player is Alexander ZINCHENKO. I know his ownership has gone above 5% now, but when I was first making these notes, he was under 5%, and that was kind of my threshold. But yeah, he's slightly over now, but still, this is still a real differential. A lot of people are typically going for Matty Cash or maybe Kieran Trippier in the 5 million region, but ZINCHENKO playing for Arsenal, playing for a good team that's having a really good pre-season and is hoping to maybe get a little bit better from the 4th place last season, could be a real nice pick. Now, we know ZINCHENKO is a fantastic player who creates a lot of chances from that left back position. He's done it every time he's played for Man City. It's always been a case of game time kind of limiting the amount of, you know, FPL points, I guess, he can produce. But if he's getting regular game time for Arsenal, and I do think he's going to get a lot of game time for Arsenal, then I think that all changes. Now, we're not exactly sure where ZINCHENKO is going to play. On the Arsenal website, they actually introduced him as a midfielder for Arsenal, Arsenal's new midfielder. That's, of course, where he plays for Ukraine. So I think he is going to be wanting to play in midfield a little bit. He's kind of come out in the public and said, I want to play in midfield in the future. That's my preferred position. But he will play some minutes at left back as well when Tierney is being managed, his minutes being managed, or if Tierney is injured at any given time. But I think primarily he could be playing as a left central midfielder, possibly an attacking midfielder at times, which is just going to be amazing because he's listed as a defender. He's going to be creating enough chances when he's kind of in defence. When he's actually playing as essentially an attacker, despite being listed as a defender, he's going to get more opportunities to shoot and create, and he could be an absolute points machine. You know, you only need a clean sheet and 1 assist, and suddenly you're gobbling up 3 bonus points as well. We're talking about 12 pointers, guys. You know, for a lot of weeks for ZINCHENKO, it could be absolutely an unreal pick. But, of course, it does contain just that little bit of risk. The fixtures are good. We've got some very good fixtures for Arsenal at the beginning of the season. I think this one could go absolutely crazy. I'm really thinking about this one myself. It's not super risky. I think it's a pretty safe pick, but it is still a huge differential. Jack Grealish. Like, no one is talking about Jack Grealish. He is obviously a player who suffered from a lot of rotation last season, maybe a little bit of a disappointing opening season at Man City. But we did see at the end of last season, he did start to come into it a little bit and, you know, started to look like the player that Man City, I guess, hoped he would be. They spent a lot of money on him. He is expected to be the long-term left winger, and especially if we're talking about players like Phil Foden potentially moving out to the right-hand side or playing in midfield, Grealish is possibly going to occupy that left wing position. You know, Sterling's gone as well, obviously. So the primary left winger, I think, genuinely could be Jack Grealish going into the new Man City season. We saw in the first Man City friendly match, Jack Grealish played very well. He was creating loads of chances. He was able to take a shot or two himself, which was really good to see. And he's probably one of the men of the match in that game. He played really well in the pre-season. So end of last season, very good. Beginning of this season in the friendlies, pretty good. Is he going to be starting for Man City? I think he might be. And if that is the case, 7 million for a starting Man City attacker is going to look like phenomenal value, particularly if you're looking to cover the Man City attack in games like this Bournemouth at home game. Obviously, a lot of people haven't got Haaland in their team, and if you haven't got Haaland, you're probably going to be looking for an alternative Man City attacker, but you don't necessarily want to spend loads of money if there is that little bit of risk attached. So Grealish for 7 million, I think could be really good. I think this could be his year, his big season. I think he can come back to the player everyone kind of hoped he would be. This is the year for him. Could it be that at the beginning of this season, he's going to go nuclear again? Maybe. Okay, so I've actually got a couple of 4.5 million defender suggestions in this video, because I know everyone in the 4.5 million defender category, a lot of people are defaulting to Tomiyasu. I think you could potentially do a little bit better than Tomiyasu. So we've got Janssen here. I know a lot of people like Raya for their 4.5 million goalkeeper for Brentford. So why not? If you're happy to go for a goalkeeper, why not go for a defender as well? Now, last season, we saw Janssen get a decent amount of goals and assists. And if the clean sheets are added to that, and there was a few clean sheets that Brentford got in the second half of last season, then I think, you know, we're going to be talking points galore for a 4.5 million defender. It's pretty nice. Obviously, he is super nailed on. Obviously, particularly after the Leicester and Man United games, Brentford's fixtures are pretty good indeed. You can see in Gameweek 3 and 4, Fulham and Everton, that's pretty nice. So that could actually spell a decent amount of points, and there is a real potential for Janssen to outscore someone like Tomiyasu. So if you're thinking about going a little bit different, you're not quite fully convinced by Tomiyasu, but you have that 4.5 million defense slot in your team, I don't see why people are not considering Janssen a little bit more. Like, he is genuinely an attacking threat in a good, solid defensive team, particularly when Raya is fit and available in goal. That's going to boost the clean sheets. The fixtures are decent. You know, this could be genuinely quite good. I kind of like this one. All right, here he is, Anthony Gordon, the 5.5 million midfielder that nobody is really talking about. Everyone has defaulted to Neto, but again, what we're talking about is differentials, little players that can spice up your team a little bit. And if you don't fancy going for Neto for whatever reason, but you are still looking for that 5.5 million player slot, then Gordon could actually be the one for you. He played super well at the second half of last season. He became basically one of Everton's, if not Everton's, main man, best player, star man, you know, up there with Richarlison, who, you know, obviously dominated quite well. But yeah, Gordon, second half of last season, nailed on. Obviously now he's got the number 10 shirt for Everton, so they clearly really want to focus their entire team around him, build around Gordon and really progress Gordon. He's a really quick player. He is constantly looking to get forward, get in the box, take shots on and create as well. And I think he kind of broke through last season. This season could be the season where he becomes that main man, that star for Everton. Now, after the Chelsea game, Everton's fixtures aren't too bad. I don't think they're too bad at all, really. So it might actually be worth having a go on Gordon instead of Neto. Like, I don't see why Gordon couldn't do a similar amount of damage. I think it could be pretty interesting. So if you're not really fancying Neto or other 5.5 or 5 million midfielders, maybe Gordon. Anthony Gordon, could he be your guy? Another 4.5 million defender here, and we've got Lewis Dunk. Had a bit of a disappointing season last year, obviously suffered from injury a little bit, and he only scored 1 goal. But typically, Lewis Dunk scores like 5 goals a season, gets a couple of assists as well. He is one of those absolute, you know, aerial masters, you know, absolute like target man from those set pieces where Brighton do have to get a few of their goals from typically each season, and most seasons, because of Lewis Dunk's incredible attacking threat despite being a centre-back in a fairly good defensive team as well, he's often like listed as a 5 million player. Like over the last few seasons, we've seen Lewis Dunk every season, well, a lot of the seasons anyway, listed as a 5 million defender. Now this year, he's a 4.5 million defender, which is a little bit of a bargain if you compare it to previous seasons. It's just about whether you think he's going to get back to his best. Brighton looked really good at the end of the last season. They actually kept, I think, 4 clean sheets in their final 9 games, which is, you know, really decent. That's a lot of clean sheets. You know, the top teams in the whole league probably, you know, maybe get a clean sheet every other game if they're very fortunate. So if Brighton can continue that run of clean sheets, solidify defensively a little bit, then Lewis Dunk at 4.5 million, super nailed on, club captain, he's going to score some headed goals again, hopefully, and could be like a real nice differential that no one is talking about right now, just because of last season it wasn't his best ever season. But if you go back, historical data suggests that Lewis Dunk is a fantastic FPL asset, and at 4.5, I don't really think you can go wrong there. Alright, a little bit of a risky one in Johnny Otto, another 4.5 million defender, of course. This is the last one of the video, I promise, guys. Obviously had a very serious long-term injury that's kind of ruled him out for pretty much 2 whole seasons, which is absolutely crazy when you think about it. And he is back now. He came back at the end of last season. He was back with a bang, you know, scored a couple of goals at the end of last season, which was just phenomenal. And looking back, Johnny is just been an absolutely crazy FPL asset. There was a time where he was pretty much in everyone's FPL teams a couple of seasons ago. At the end of last season, he kind of showed again why he is such a good FPL asset. Now, we know Wolves have got some phenomenal fixtures at the beginning of the season. We know Wolves are typically a good defence as well that can keep some clean sheets. If you think Johnny is going to be starting, whether that's at left back, well, left wing back or right wing back, probably at right wing back to start the season, then I think that he's going to be a really good pick. He's super advanced. He likes to take shots. He likes to get into the box. He's basically, you know, another version of Doherty. Those were the two players for Wolves a couple of years ago. Johnny on one side, Doherty on the other, and they were absolutely dominating it. Johnny is, you know, actually pretty much more nailed on, I would say, than Doherty at the beginning of this season anyway. So yeah, Johnny is gonna be a good one, a really, really good one, I think. And if he can score the amount of goals that I know he's capable of and takes the amount of shots that I know he's capable of, then he could be a real game changer for just 4.5 million. He's a risky one, don't get me wrong, but the fixtures are there. If he does play every single game and he does score an odd goal, and you wouldn't put it past him, you know, 2 goals in, what is it, 10 starts last season? That's pretty good returns for a 4.5 million defender. Okay, next up we've got SINISTERRA, a player that maybe not so many people know too much about, but basically last season in the Eredivisie, he was absolutely dominant. He scored 12 goals and 7 assists in 29 starts, 30 games total, and even outside that in the cup competitions and in Europe kind of thing, he was scoring even more. Like he was almost averaging a goal return each game, which is just quite mad. Now I know that is in the Netherlands. Maybe he's not going to be able to reproduce it to the same level in the Premier League. We kind of know that, but SINISTERRA is kind of known, kind of recognised as a player who is one of the next big things in terms of the wingers. He is pretty young, 23 years old. He is a little bit expensive at 6.5 million, but he's that kind of player that could become the new Rafinha, I suppose. So if you're willing to take a risk on a Leeds attacker, I think this is probably the place to go. It is really risky. It is really differential. Just 1% of people are going for SINISTERRA right now, but he's clearly a very good player. His statistics last season were absolutely phenomenal. He was absolutely flying, you know, an absolutely crazy player in the league. And Leeds have actually done really well to buy this player. They spent a lot of money on him, over £20 million on this player. So they clearly have some serious plans for him. I think he'll be nailed on. It's just a case of whether you trust the Leeds attack. And I think new management, few new players in that Leeds team, some okay fixtures at the beginning of the season as well. Maybe, just maybe, SINISTERRA could be that surprise package of the season. It's risky. We don't know how he's going to perform in the Premier League, don't get me wrong, but this is what we're looking for in these videos, isn't it? We're looking for those risky players that could be absolutely insane. And finally, JONNY WISSA. Like, I know a few people have spoken about him before. I've been kind of a little bit cautious to speak about him too much because I do think he is super risky in terms of game time. I'm not really fully convinced of how much game time he is going to get. At the start of last season, he was pretty much on the bench or coming off the bench for a few minutes. Second half of the season, he's began to nail himself on a little bit more, playing most games, but even at that point, he wasn't really, wasn't starting every single game. This new season, there's maybe a little bit more competition for his place as well, but what cannot be denied is last season he was doing very well. He was scoring very frequently, particularly at the end of the season, getting assists as well. Even though he's listed as a midfielder, he can play on, well, he can technically play on either wing, primarily on the left wing, but he can also play as a forward, and he has played as a striker for a decent amount of games for Brentford as well. So if you consider that you've potentially got an out of position midfielder who is actually a forward striker, who capable of scoring goals. Clearly, he's already proven that in the Premier League. Could he get even better in the new season? Possibly. You hope that a team like Brentford is going to be a team that is improving year on year. I think he could potentially be a good pick, but at 0.3% ownership, you can kind of understand why he's super risky. But he is just 5.5 million, so it's a risk, but it's a cheap risk. It's an inexpensive risk to take. So maybe it's worth considering. I'm not fully convinced by this one, but I can clearly see that there is some potential here. It could go off. He could be a player that's really good to own at certain parts of the season and maybe not at other points of the season. If you get the timing right, maybe it could be incredible. But yeah, like we said earlier, Brentford's fixtures are pretty good at the start of the season. I think even the Leicester and Man United games could be very decent as well. So yeah, I'm kind of backing Wissa to have a okay season as long as he can get the game time. If he can start the season well and he can nail himself on in that Brentford attack, he could be the man. He could be the man. Like, probably not, but maybe. You never know. It's a risk. That's what this video is about. And there we go, guys. 8 players who I think will be really interesting differentials to go for. If you are thinking about going for a differential, I'm sure that maybe 1 or 2 players in this video are players that you might want to consider. Please let me know what you think of these differentials. Do you rate any of them? Do you actually think some of them will absolutely flop and are not good differentials at all, not good hidden gems? Let me know that as well. And if you've got any other hidden gems, differentials you'd like to share with the group, please do leave that in the comments as well. I'll be very interested to read some of them. And if we've got enough suggestions, if you come up with enough good players, then yeah, that's probably going to mean that maybe we've got some potential to make another one of these hidden gem videos, because I do like looking for those differentials, doing a bit of research into some players who could perform, who people aren't really talking about very much. So yeah, very fun to make. Like the video, really helps out the channel, as you guys know I say it every video. Please do subscribe as well if you haven't done already. We are getting there. We are getting there. Slowly but surely we're getting up the subscribers, aren't we? But yeah, that's pretty much it from me today. Loads more videos to come this week. Hope you're going to enjoy them, and I will see you later next. Bye bye.